Good afternoon, everybody. How are you? It's cold here in Santander, but oh well, let's see what we can do this afternoon. I've already been introduced. My name is Manuel Guerra, and I work for the Technological Central Investigation Unit for the police, Spanish police force. We in our unit are in charge of persecuting all sort of criminal activities carried out through new technologies. Well, selling children's pornography through the internet, fraud in general, for instance, fraudulent sales of houses, for instance, cars, and also computer attacks and hacking and piracy. So all these crimes are the ones that are investigated by our unit. But more specifically, I work in a department called a technical section, and there we don't carry out normal sort of investigations. We provide forensic analysis support in the case of crime. I always repeat this because nowadays any crime present in the Spanish criminal code includes some technological component. For instance, a drug dealing crime is there's nothing digital to it, theoretically speaking. Somebody is selling drugs, but there is a cell phone involved between the dealer and whoever buys the drug, and this is digital evidence that needs to be processed in order to get all the information that may be useful in a trial. And this cannot be done just anyway. It has to be done through a procedure, through a protocol. A murder where there's been a camera involved and where evidence is stored, and this is what we deal with mainly. But going back in time and going to the past, if we think of a situation 10, 15 years ago, for instance, when we went into a house to search a house, maybe we just found, I don't know, a cell phone, but no WhatsApp, no Facebook, or even computers 10, 15 years ago. You must think what sort of computers you had 10 or 15 years ago in your house. You're lucky if you had one. And pen drives, maybe 500 megas capacity. So nobody has such poor capacity pen drives. And the same applies to companies. What happened 10, 15 years ago in companies when we went to companies that had been involved in money laundering, for instance? What did we find when searching it? Paper. The only technology we could find in a company or an office was the coffee machine. Now when we go into a house, what do we normally find? Well, at least we find 5 or 6 cell phones, mother's phone, father's phone, father's second phone, his wife doesn't know about. So lots of evidence that needs to be checked and processed. When we get to a house, the bad guy will never say, yes, look in that cupboard and see what you find. So we need to look into all these devices and gadgets in order to find evidence, and then other technology things, for instance, a router, in order to go into the internet when there's Wi-Fi. And this is just a mini computer that manages the internet with Wi-Fi. It may store MAC addresses or an NAS. 10, 15 years ago, you couldn't think that somebody would have a high capacity storage system at home. And right now, having this in the house is more or less normal. I mean, it's not something that we're surprised with. And now come all the gadgets, for instance, some sort of smartwatch that can be connected to your iPhone or Android, or if you want to know your heart beats or rate. Who doesn't have a smartwatch? Raise your hands. Well, so smartwatch is a digital evidence. Let's imagine that all of a sudden you see a dead person lying on the floor with a smartwatch, wearing a smartwatch. You can tell when this person died, because if this person was wearing a smartwatch, obviously when her heart stopped beating, this would be reflected in the smartwatch. So you can get lots of information from a watch, and also smart TVs. I'm sitting at home and I can go in the net, and this smart TV probably has a webcam, and maybe somebody has attacked it and has activated it remotely and has recorded me on a Saturday night at home, lying on my couch. And perhaps I don't want anybody of you to know what I was doing lying on a couch in front of a TV on a Saturday night. And so we need to know who breached my privacy. The refrigerator, fridge. I'm at home, I drink milk, and all of a sudden I run out of milk, and the fridge can purchase or buy a carton of milk and have the milk delivered in my house the next morning, because it knows what my credit card number is. And of course, a hacker, somebody could go into my fridge or find out what my credit card number is. And of course, like intelligent or smart mirrors, of course, anybody would like to get up in the morning and sitting in front of the mirror and have the mirror say to you, "You look wonderful today." So the designer decided to have an SSH without any security, or with a default sort of accuser, or an admin 1234 or something very easy, so that somebody could connect to the bathroom mirror. Imagine what could happen if somebody does so in your bathroom. So imagine how complex things can become. So any sort of device is going to have this technological component. So we work in, for instance, searches in houses or companies or offices to get information when it is fresh information, hot information, warm information. So what do we need to do when we first arrive in the house of somebody, what's the first thing one must do? What's the first thing? What do you think is the first thing we must do when breaking into a house? No, before cloning, what's the first thing we must do? Well, you must knock on the door or ring the bell. Yes, first we need to get in. How can we do this if we haven't walked into the house to begin with? So if we're dressed as policemen and knock on the door, maybe the uglies will destroy everything they have in the house, all the evidence. Well, this doesn't always happen, but depending on how nasty the guy is or how smart, maybe he or she will destroy the evidence. So we need to go in quickly. All of the fireworks and everything. But since we are legal police, the government provides us with a series of elements that allows us to break into a house in an easy manner, such as we have a master key. We have a master key, and this is compatible with most locks that you see in houses. So this allows us to walk into a house even if the person inside doesn't open the door. And this is what this master key looks like. It weighs 20 kilos of reinforced concrete, and it's compatible with any lock whatsoever you may find in this country. So, and now I'm going to run a short video clip. Yes, cloning and hash and this and that, and but if you don't go into a house, if you don't break into a house properly, you won't be able to do anything. So I'm going to show you this small video clip. No, this wasn't it. Just a second. You allow me?
Ahí es una entrada y registro, no se ve muy bien.
Yeah, well, the master key, they're trying to open the door. Of course, people inside don't want to open the door, so my colleague needs to break in through the terrace. With a helmet, a gun, everything. A lot of weight. And this is a real thing, you know. This is a drug dealing bust. So what was happening there? Well, in the house, all the drugs were hidden, and every time they'd hit the door with the master key, they'd burnt all the drugs inside. Every minute went by, they were destroying drugs. So our job has to do with preventing this from happening. This happens with drug dealing, that is analogic sort of crimes. No digital component to begin with, or in theory, just a chunk or a hashish or whatever. But what's happening nowadays? Nowadays, when we break into a house, we find a hard disk inside the fireplace. And perhaps it's the month of July, and in July it's not that cold really in Madrid, so why should a fireplace be going? And same that was happening with drugs, and now they do it with hard disks. Simply burn them. It's a CD unit, a hard disk, and of course it was charred with cell phones, mobile phones. This is a wall with a hole for ventilation, and they threw the mobile phone out of this ventilation, hole, and this is the first thing we need to do in order to analyze evidence. We need to find it to begin with, or else there's no investigating the evidence. We need to find it. If there's no evidence, there's nothing. So maybe with machine learning we'll get there, but not yet. So now that we broke in, we've been able to locate that evidence, that cell phone, that pen drive, that hard disk. Now what? Now what? Obviously we need to process it right way in order to try and bring this information before to a judge, and that's our job, to bring this evidence to a judge. And mobile telephony, mobile phones, analyzing mobile phones, whatever the model is, it doesn't matter. The first thing is to get the phone, and by acquiring the phone, I'm not referring to purchasing or buying the phone, or by acquiring the hard disk. People think that we buy the hard disk from the thieves or the criminals. Now, by acquiring evidence, we refer to capturing it, and we use automated devices such as the one you see on the screen. This is a cloner or a cloning device. In the old days we used to have a hard disk cloning machines, and right now we have this for mobile phones. We connect the cell phone and it produces an image or replicates an image of that or a mirror of that, mirrors whatever's inside the phone. So these are machines that somebody's programmed for a given aim. So if we want to get information from the cell phone, and if the machine hasn't been programmed for this, so if the machine doesn't include the action or whatever it is we want it to do, then nothing. So this is where the work of the forensic analysts comes in place. Obviously, this is like craftsmanship. It's not like a piece of furniture you have at home that's been done in a factory. This is different from a piece of furniture that's been done by somebody who works wood, a craftsman. Obviously, it's not the same to do automated data extraction from a machine than if we do it by hand. And I'm going to show you an example, give you an example in order to illustrate this. And I'm going to be using the example of WhatsApp. This is database viewer or reader.
Esto simplemente es la base de datos msgstory.db de WhatsApp.
This is all the messages we sent via WhatsApp are stored in a database that is called NGS something store and MSGS store. So these data are taken out in order for the analyst to check them. But what if we need to find something that the automatic machine can't find? Then we need to pull it out of the database. And for instance, there was an example: a mobile phone had been sending WhatsApps, and the person manipulating it wasn't touching or didn't have the cell phone in his hand. It's like if you have this phone sitting on the table, and nobody's touching it, but it's sending WhatsApps automatically. So some weeks ago, some weeks before we investigated this, WhatsApp Web had just come out a few weeks before. So somebody was sending WhatsApps from a computer. And if you see this, and this column right here, there's a detail. There's this thing I'm highlighting in green. If we select it, you see that these three cells, this one and the one underneath, they all begin with 3EB0. So WhatsApp inserted this 3EB0 code every time somebody sent a WhatsApp through WhatsApp Web, unlike regular WhatsApp. But if I send it with WhatsApp Web linked to the telephone, it will insert this clue, this key. Fine. But when WhatsApp Web, nobody knew. So we had to do all this reverse engineering in order to see what sort of password this WhatsApp Web carried. Whether in this case it's this 3 EB0 thing. You may tell me, well, you say that perhaps the conversation could have been manipulated. People ask us this. Yes, manipulating a database. Seculite is not easy. So a series of conditions need to be there. Manipulating conversations such as the one you can see here will leave traces and leave a trail. And thus you can tell whether a database has been manipulated or not. For instance, when I was a kid, I was in school, I was given a notebook, a paper notebook, and the teacher would write down a number on each page from 1 to 100. Why? Well, because maybe when they started throwing pieces of chalk or playing around with other kids, the teacher would write a note for my parents on my notebook saying that I hadn't behaved. This is why they were numbered, because I could have ripped out a page of the notebook. And the same thing here. If we go to this little bar here, we see that they're all numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Maybe we could manipulate the contents of a message, but we cannot inject or put in a conversation that never took place. And this is extremely complex because there are many variables at play. So it's not easy to manipulate a WhatsApp conversation. It's not easy at all. So if you want to know how WhatsApp work, next Saturday at noon I will be given a 2-hour workshop on WhatsApp autopsy. So if you're forensic analysts, I recommend you to attend, because I'll tell you how WhatsApp works and about all these tricks. But going back to the beginning of the talk, there's a whole set of mobile devices. So what do we do with all these things? Let's go to PCs. When we need to extract, get information from PC, we see multimedia videos, Word documents. We don't do an analysis to see if there's been some sort of malware or how many times it's been on or off. So when filtering these data is enough. And this sounds silly, very simple, but many forensic analyses can be done simply by filtering documents by extension. But when things become complicated, we study information coming from the system. For instance, all the different sites or hits to a given site. But doing an analysis of artifacts of a regular, normal computer could take us here to, for instance, 89,000 items in just one computer. 89,000 computers or documents or items that somebody has to analyze. And this is where the difficult thing is. The problem is to analyze all this information and to tell the wheat from the chaff. And the problem is to analyze all this information. There's another problem, and the forensic analysis in the cloud. You may think that I may have confidential information in my laptop, but if you take it away and you try and analyze it, perhaps you'll find that there's nothing in it. Why? Because everything's in the cloud, in Drive, in Gmail, whatever, Facebook, Twitter, all the pictures, everything. But in the computer, there's nothing. There's operating system, etc. And more we find computers like these. It's a basic computer with web engine, etc., etc. Everything's in the cloud, and accessing the cloud is a very difficult thing. It's not easy. It's not easy because a series of very complex tasks must be carried out in order to be able to go in the cloud. And this is another technical difficulties we have to face every day. And then companies. What I said at the beginning, that 10 years ago, if you broke into a company, went into a company, there were piles of paper. Right now there are piles of servers, CPDs, large data centers. And that's not paper, it's a whole bunch of boxes with many LEDs, lights that make noise. So if we need to break into a house or to get some servers, you put some tape around the door and nobody walks in. Looks very nice for the picture. It looks great, but a server in data processing center, it doesn't matter if you seal, if you put all this tape around the door, because anybody can break in remotely. And so what do we need to do? So obviously we need to determine what sort of network topology we are speaking of. What do I mean by this? We need to know where every wire is hooked to. You see a yellow at the top, orange in the middle, etc. But this is not how it is. And this is what we normally find. This is what we have to face every day. Everybody's been seen CPDs looking like this. And this is reality. The other thing was a pretty picture. We need to know where the router is, what the firewall is, etc., etc. And obviously, that without the help of whoever set it up, it is extremely difficult to go in.
And using the master key I showed you before, we can actually violate a security door of the CPD, but the logical security is more complicated if it has firewalls or encoded systems, etc. Then the hypervisors that they can use. In the past, each server had one OS each. Now they are all almost virtual. Citrix is not the same as Hyper-V or any other brand. They don't work the same way. And we need to know how each of them works in order to extract the information we need. We cannot lose all the information that we virtually have just because someone pushed a button. The WAN, the internet, it is a risk to leave things connected to the internet, but to disconnect is also a risk. It's something we need to take into account. What about the backup systems? Sometimes people say, here you have everything you want, everything you ask for is in this backup tape. Now there is no human way possible to read it because nobody's touched it for 20 years. That is impossible, that is infeasible. This is the kind of thing that we cannot accept today. You cannot bring us a backup tape that is unreadable nowadays. So all these complications together make things very hard. And then there is the famous red button. Who's heard of the red button before? Please raise your hand. Who's ever seen a red button in reality? Have you ever seen a red button in reality ever in your life? Me neither. I've never seen such a button. We hear about it on the media. The bad guys have a red button. When they push it, the hell is coming, fire, flames everywhere. I've never seen it. But what I've seen many times is remote administration systems in a data center. The administrator is not in front of the server with a scorching heat. If you've ever been into a data center, you will know that it is not pleasant to be there. The administrator is sitting in his wonderful chair with 5 different screens, wonderful keyboard, and a coffee machine next to him, a comfortable place, and they connect to the server remotely in whichever way has been enabled. That's what we need. It doesn't matter if we go to the data center, we tape it all around. If the administrator is 5 floors above us and is constantly deleting files, this kind of details need to be considered. So there are no red buttons, but there are security measures in data centers. What is weird in this picture? You rabbits, please don't speak, but the rest. What, Joseph, you're not entitled to speak here, but what do you see here? What is weird about this picture? The box. Yeah, what is in the box? Don't stay there. What is that box? That black? Well, you cannot see it, but this black thing on the left is a 12-volt battery that is inside this white box. Inside the white box, there is a switch, a pressure switch. This was covered by a plate. When this plate is uncovered, the circuit closes, the pushes goes off, and 12 volts of power go to the hard disk. And what happens in this case? Well, the hard disk won't go faster, at least that. What happens is more similar to fireworks. So we have a top-notch security and technology device, which is a piece of rope that we would use to manipulate and avoid this trap from happening. So this is what it was all about. When someone would remove the plate, this is what happened. These look like small things, but these small things can ruin an entire operation. This is what I was saying before. The law is with us, and I'm serious now. The Spanish criminal law says that system administrators in a company are forced to collaborate with judges or police forces in order to provide information regarding the system network topology and all the things I talked about. And when I talk about the system administrator, I mean the person who is actually working in-house. I'm not talking about researchers. So this is what we usually call an administrator, a system administrator. Well, the system administrator can refuse to speak. Then we arrest him. But we don't have the password, so we cannot go in. So there are other more traditional ways in order to obtain passwords for vaults, for lockers, etc. This is very, very secret. But take a look. It is about going beyond. Maybe we are burning our brains here trying to obtain a password, and sometimes it's just sticked on the screen. This is no secret, and I'm sure this is no news to you. Anyway, and to wrap up, what is the goal of our interventions? Well, we try to turn data into digital evidence, and this will happen when the treatment is correct. How do we enable that correct treatment? We provide data with concrete characteristics. First, integrity. This means that it hasn't been manipulated, it hasn't been tampered with. If here you see JJA. JJA is what I take to the judge. That is what we call integrity. Traceability. Know where it has gone through. Today it's in my hands, and tomorrow it will be in somebody else's hand, and then into somebody else's hand. That's the traceability. And the individuality, that is, to mark each evidence in a singular way. If we seize a bag full of 50 mobile phones without any numbering or anything, there is no personalization or singularization whatsoever. So these are the three characteristics we need to turn data into digital evidence with a true custody chain. And also, if we add a digital signature, MD5SHA1, we are expanding that custody chain. This may sound strange. It's not compulsory to have a digital signature for every evidence. I will explain it later on. What I wanted to say here, the point I wanted to make, was to explain the theory of the poisoned tree. What is the theory about? If I have an evidence, and if I have obtained more information out of that evidence, but if the first evidence was obtained irregularly or illegally or inadequately, that evidence and all the information I can take from that evidence will be invalidated. That's why we need to treat digital evidence in an adequate manner from the very beginning. If we've made any mistake at the moment of seizing it, we are wasting our time, because the custody chain is broken, the tree is poisoned. So how do we avoid this with the custody chain? The pen drive needs to be safeguarded in a bag with a tag so that it is traceable, and we have to identify the custodians all the time. It's as simple as that. And of course, the labeling of digital evidence needs to be perfect. Here you can see a black computer, a pair of sneakers, and many other objects. Do you think they are correctly labeled? Do you think that these digital evidence are correctly labeled? Please raise your hands if you think this is correct. Nobody thinks it's correct. Who believes this is incorrectly labeled? This is a mess. And the ones who don't raise their hands is because they come from Galicia, as myself. Well, then they are right, because the right answer is it depends. It depends on the kind of crime we are investigating. For example, if these evidence come from a car hijack or a car theft, that beer can, the tobacco packs, etc. If these objects were stolen from a car, these are stolen merchandise. They are no digital evidence, and we don't need to guarantee the custody chain of the data they have. The data belong to the person who's been stolen. So we need to label these objects, but not as digital evidence. It's like, for example, I'm burgled at home and they steal my TV set from home, or if my car is stolen. It depends on the crime that we are investigating. If it's a normal evidence, not a digital one, we don't have to label it necessarily. I understand I know that it's difficult to understand, but it's not that complicated. So it depends on the kind of evidence it is, as I'm saying. Here is my portable phone. It is connected to 3G, 4G, whatever. And imagine I made a mess and my police fellows arrest me and they take my phone from me, put it into a bag, they tape it. It is signed by 5 different people and they do many things. Do you believe that this has been correctly labeled? No, because the phone is on and it's covered. So it's useless to have it inside a sealed bag if somebody from the outside can connect to it and delete all the contents inside. This will be nothing but a seized stone. So we need to take care of these tiny details. So we can use the aircraft mode on the phone in order to avoid manipulations on the evidence. And any procedures that we perform on the phone shall be registered in writing. For example, this phone went into the phone mode this day and at this time. Then the bag that we use has metallic thread, so any device that goes inside the bag loses its coverage because radio frequency is inhibited, so the mobile phone is without coverage. There is a problem. If I use one of these bags, the mobile doesn't have a coverage, but mobiles are designed to be covered at all times, so they would use their antennas at their maximum in order to gain that coverage. That way they will use more and more electricity, and we've made things worse because the mobile would have gone off in 5 hours, say, and now it's going to go off in 40 minutes. So what we do is use an external battery to avoid that. But this is a thing that we have to bear in mind. If we don't keep that in mind, we may seize a portable phone and it may be shut down. What about the pen drives, the flash drives? If I have a flash drive and well, this is a digital evidence, by the way. So if I hook it up to a laptop or a desktop computer, Windows is going to write on the USB unit. If Windows writes on that unit, we are slightly altering that unity. The theory of the poison tree I talked about, the evidence is useless. If we need to analyze a flash drive, we need to do it correctly. How? When the flash drive is connected to the computer needs to be configured in read-only mode. This is something that we can do with software or with the modification of keys. So from that moment on, every device we use will work in read-only mode only. So if we try to rename a file or do anything on the unit, we won't be able to because we are in read-only mode. It's true that the forensic analysis systems are configured this way, And if on a later stage we want to do something about that flash drive, we can do it. But we don't have to rush, because sometimes if we stick that flash drive in our computer and it's not in read-only mode, we are in trouble. In Windows, usually when we run a program, a software, in order to avoid overriding, the antivirus sometimes blocks that software, and when we believe that that we're covered, we aren't, because the auto-run feature popped up. How do we avoid this? With hardware blockers. This is just a device that acts as a bridge between the computer and the units we want to connect, and it's all protected against writing. No matter how our computer is set up, it is impossible to manipulate that evidence. I've used the yellow one because it's the most noticeable one. They have some sort of switch that can change from read-only to writable mode. They have this pin, as I said, but just bear it in mind. So, to wrap up, if we've adequately treated all the digital evidence, as we have said, we can go to the judge and provide evidence that is totally valid for a trial, that can be considered by the judge in order to dictate a sentence based on evidence that have been taken correctly. And this is our purpose, our goal: provide evidence and data objectively and validly. So if we go that far, we've really walked a long way. This was all on my part. I hope I wasn't too boring. It's been a real pleasure to tell you a little bit about our work, our difficulties, and how we overcome them. So, my pleasure. Thank you very much.